I originally wanted to post a biscuit recipe in time for Mother's Day on the blog. So I whipped up a batch and they came out okay, but I wasn't 100% satisfied with the flavor. So I didn't post it in time. But I did put up a pic on Instagram and I figured I'll just file this away until sometime later. But then some of you actually commented and wrote, "Oh, when are you gonna post this biscuit recipe? I can't wait for this recipe." So I felt really pressured to go back to the drawing board, and that's what I did. I busted out batch after batch after batch of biscuits. And I'm excited to tell you that today I'll be sharing my buttermilk bacon biscuits. They're savory with a hint of sweetness, and they're soft, fluffy, flaky, and delicious. And I think the best part of it is that you don't need any special equipment. All you need is a bowl and your hands. So grab your buttermilk and your bacon and I'll show you how to make it. I'm not joking when I say that I could probably make these biscuits in my sleep because I literally made so many biscuits in the last few days that I don't even know what to tell you. But this one is actually very easy and all you need is flour, salt, baking powder, unsalted butter, buttermilk, honey, bacon, and chives. I'm measuring out roughly 3 tablespoons of chives, but you could always use more or less, or even leave it out completely if you're not into the onion flavor. And then I used 3 strips of thick cut bacon because I had some left over from my spring pasta carbonara recipe. If you have it, then use it. If not, I would use maybe about 5-6 strips of regular bacon. I actually cooked this up last night because for biscuits, you want all of your ingredients to be cold. So I figured why not just save myself a step today. We can get rid of this stuff and measure out our flour. All you need is 2 cups of all-purpose flour. And I just kind of use a butter knife and mix it up because if it's been sitting there for a while, it's going to get kind of dense when you pack it into the cup. And with baking, you definitely want to be precise. Level it off. It's 1, 2, and add half a teaspoon of kosher salt. And if you don't have it, then just use a 1/4 teaspoon of fine salt. 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder. 1, 2.5. And this helps your biscuits to rise. So you got to make sure that your baking powder is no more than about 6 months old. Whisk it up because you don't want bitter clumps of baking powder in your biscuits. And then I have butter in the fridge because I wanted to keep it cold. 5 tablespoons of unsalted butter chopped up into a 1/2-inch dice. This is the part that's the most important in biscuits. Keep your butter cold even when you're working with it. This is less than a stick of butter for 2 cups of flour, which might be a little bit less than other biscuit recipes call for, but I got the inspiration from a cooking light recipe, but you still don't miss anything. Like it still tastes buttery, it still tastes good. What I'm doing is using a chef's favorite tools, which are my hands. I'm just using my fingertips and breaking up the butter, incorporating into the flour and turning it into a coarse meal. You want larger pieces of butter. About the size of small peas. Like you don't want it to be gigantic, like these are too huge. If they're too large, break it up, like that's a bit large. So what this butter does is that when it's cold and it's left large like this and you put it in a hot oven, the steam is gonna form inside the biscuit, but there's nowhere for it to escape. So it's gonna just steam and fluff up inside the biscuit, and that's what creates the height and layers. Basically, when you make biscuits, be paranoid that your butter is melting and just pop it in the fridge whenever you get a chance if you feel like it's getting too soft on you. So So my butter flour mixture is in the fridge, chilling out literally. And then I have also my frosty chilled glass of buttermilk. So I'm using 3/4 of a cup. And then I have 3 tablespoons of honey. And this adds a little bit of floral sweetness, but you know, it's gloppy and thick, so you want to dissolve it into the buttermilk. If you don't have buttermilk, that's totally fine. If you happen to have whole milk, you can kind of imitate your buttermilk by pouring in slightly less than what you need and then topping it off with some lemon juice or vinegar. And then that will curdle the milk and also sour it a little bit, and that's kind of the essence of buttermilk. You gotta work with 2 hands, and with one, pour in some buttermilk slowly, and with the other, use a rubber spatula because I think that works the best. You could use your hands too, but then you gotta work quickly and make sure that the heat of your hands don't melt that butter. Oops. With biscuit recipes, you might notice that a lot of the times people will say, make sure you don't overwork the dough because it'll get tough. And that's true, but don't let that scare you because you wanna make sure that the dry ingredients really do absorb all of that moisture. By the way, don't mind the lawnmower if you can hear it outside. I don't know why, but we always film on days that people are mowing the grass. And then at this point, you want to add in your mix-ins. So in this case, it's my bacon and chives. Make sure you do it at this point, after the liquid is in. And then just slightly and gently knead it in the bowl, just so that all the crumbs and pieces get incorporated in there. Just enough, not too much. Get your bench flour and use a light hand, a little sprinkle. Grab your dough. And then I'm just really gonna knead it 3 or 4 times maximum. So I'm just gonna fold it towards me, push it down, quarter turn, fold it, flour your rolling pin. You're going for about a 1/2 inch thick oblong shape. Like, I'm not gonna shoot for a perfect rectangle. So 1/2 inch in thickness evenly. We're about there. Now what you're gonna do is the layers part, which is fold it into thirds like you're folding a letter. So here and here. And then you make a quarter turn and roll it about a 1/2 inch thick again. This is kind of like the method that you would do when you're making puff pastry. If your butter is cold and you do this folding method, you will get layers. See, the second time around it looks more like a rectangle, right? Okay. This folding thing, you only do that twice. And then the last step is you're gonna roll it out. You're not gonna go for a 1/2 inch, you're gonna go for 3/4 of an inch. But don't go more than 3/4 of an inch to an inch because then they could actually puff up too much and then topple over and look ugly. I happen to get these from Sur La Table, but you could get them from any other kitchen supply store. Or you could just use a knife, but make sure it's a long knife and you just slice through it once. Don't do a seesaw rocking motion because you'll ruin and flatten all those layers that you worked hard to make. So just go whoosh, like that. This is about 2 1/4, so I'm gonna go for that today. And you're just the same thing, don't wiggle it around, just smash it like that. If you look closely, you can actually see the layers that we created in there already, these little pockets. Try to work as closely to each other as possible so you can get the most out in one roll. When you re-roll the scraps, it's totally fine, but they don't rise up as high. So I got 7 out of this first batch. And you don't even need a rolling pin. You can just use your hands and flatten it out a bit. Now I'm just gonna place these on a parchment paper lined tray. And all I'm doing is getting a dry pastry brush and dusting off all the excess flour on the bottoms, especially if you were heavy-handed when rolling it out, because that's gonna make the bottoms really dark. And then I'm gonna just place them about 1 inch apart from each other. If you have a lot of biscuits, don't try to cram them all into one tray. The oven is set to 400 degrees, but I'm gonna do one more step before I pop them in there. I'm actually gonna put this whole tray in the refrigerator for about 10 minutes because I just wanna ensure that the butter is cold because it's been rolled and worked and touched, okay? So into the fridge for about 10 minutes and just clean up all this nonsense, and that's it.
You are my favorite song that I've ever heard. Boy, you're my sunshine, yes you are. so much more.
They're so cute and flaky. You could see all of the little puffy layers. It just wants to peel apart. I made this batch without bacon or chives, and I think I also rolled it out a little bit thicker, so I ended up with less. So higher but less in quantity. Okay, let me take a taste. Ooh, look at that. You know what this reminds me of? The Pillsbury ones that come in a can. It's like a book. Look at all those beautiful bacon chivy pieces. First layer. So soft and buttery, but you instantly taste the sharp hint of the salty bacon and the freshness of the green chives. The outside is perfectly crispy, and the inside is so soft and fluffy. A little sweetness against the savoriness. Oh my gosh. Before I continue to stuff my face, how about some suggestions? Instead of using chives, you can use any kind of fresh green herb you want. Why not use scallions, parsley, and one person on my fan page actually suggested dill, and I think that would be amazing too. If you added jalapenos and cheese, this would be really good with chili. I'm just saying. If you have a lot of extra like this, because they're best eaten on the day that you bake them, but if you can't, don't worry, just pop them in a Ziploc bag, throw them in the freezer, and then when you want them, just pop them in the microwave for a few seconds, and then they're good and soft and fluffy as ever. You can always make this in advance, and then you'll have it for breakfast anytime you want it. Honestly, this was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to come up with this recipe, batch after batch of biscuits, but it was all worth it in the end because now I have this recipe in my back pocket and you do too. So I really hope you try it out. Well, I hope you enjoyed spending time with me today. If you enjoyed this video, remember to push like, leave a comment down below, and subscribe to our channel. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you try it, and I'll see you next time. Oh my gosh. It's probably my best batch yet. Really guys, you should try it with jam because that's no joke. Just adds a little something something.